coming to you direct from the nerve center of the galaxy's greatest comic. This is the 2000 AD Thrillcast.
Borag Thung Earthlets, and welcome to the latest episode of the 2000 AD Thrillcast. I am your host, Mulchar, and since it's now December, we can talk about Christmas. We've got the Christmas Prog coming up in a little while, which is your usual end-of-year bumper issue. Couple of stories of note, which is a new Strontium Dog story. This one by Rob Williams and drawn by Laurence Campbell with colours by Dylan Teague. We've got Rob and Laurence on the podcast to talk about this special little story, which, bittersweet because Carlos sadly no longer with us, but really interesting to see what the guys have done with this. And then we talk to Michael Carroll and Jake Lynch about the new series of Proteus Vex, which is beginning in the end of year prog. Jake taking over on art duties from Henry Flint. But great to see what they're doing with that as well. Make sure that you pre-order your copy of the Christmas Prog if it's not already part of your subscription. Go along to shop.2000ad.com and it's right there in the featured items. You'll be able to find it nicely. Great to round off the year with effectively an annual. I mean, let's face it, that's basically what it is. So we'll be focusing on a few of the stories over this week and next week, which we're looking forward to. Do make sure you're signed up to the Thrill Mail to get all the latest news about 2000 AD and the galaxy's greatest comics. Go along to 2000ad.com/thrillmail. That's all one word. And you get a weekly blast of thrill power into your inbox. And do make sure you're signed up, because there's going to be a nice little treat for free for you all when in the lead up to Christmas, because Tharg is generous and it's Christmas time, whether we like it or not, as if time has any meaning anymore. So without much further ado, let's crack on with the interviews. Rob and Laurence came on to Zoom to chat about their Strontium Dog story, Once Upon a Time in the West. New Strontium Dog in the Christmas Prog. Now, we can't start this conversation without talking about Carlos, who we lost 2 years ago now. And if there's one strip in which a creative team are just so intertwined, it's Strontium Dog. It's always difficult to think of Strontium Dog without thinking of Carlos. I just want to get an idea of how this story came about, your motivations for doing it, what you want to do with the project. Just because I think a lot of people assumed that Strontium Dog would be retired now. So, from your perspective, how did this come about?
Well, Laurence did a sketch in a sketchbook of Johnny Alpha, and it looked amazing. And also, what I loved about it, it had a tinge of Starlord classic, sort of the real early doors sort of Strontium Dog, and also it just didn't look anything like Carlos's take. And I think if you're gonna do Strontium Dog, you can't. You've got to do something a little bit of a different take on it, because, as you said, like Carlos is, it's so impossible to think of Strontium Dog without Carlos. So it was really just a case of sort of, I dropped Laurence a line and sort of said that sketch is beautiful, and like we should do in an ideal world we do a one-off Strontium Dog story. And then I sort of thought maybe it would fit in a Christmas prog as just purely as a one-off, because I don't think you can, you can't even remotely go near the body of work of sort of like the of Stront over the years, and what John and Alan and Carlos did with it. But just as a little fun 8-page one-off, sort of, which is really sort of very sort of, it's almost like a little tribute, I guess you'd say. What do you think, Laurence?
Yeah, as I said, as you said, it kind of started off with I was asked to kind of do a sketch in somebody's kind of sketchbook, and I thought about who I really wanted to do, and I've always liked kind of Starlord, Strontium Dog, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll do that one kind of thing, and I love the costume and how there's little changes to it and things like that. So I've done that, and then that was it really. Doing that kind of pleased me, but I thought that was it. I never thought there'd be a strip that would come from it at all, kind of thing. Then, as I said, Rob kind of emailed me, and I was like, yeah, I'll be up for that. And then Rob kind of started talking about how he wanted to do it and emphasised on how it shouldn't look like Carlos's work or like work in the past, as it were, but we could pick up on kind of certain elements. So Rob wanted to make it widescreen, which I think works. We took it back to its almost kind of like Western influence as well. And we kind of coloured the first 2 pages and then made the rest kind of grayscale kind of thing to kind of reflect the Starlord old school kind of feel. I purposely drew Johnny in his old uniform with the old gun as well. So kind of, I wanted a lot of respect to that era, as it were, because I picked up Starlord before I picked up 2000 AD. So this was a big homage to it. And then I remember when the script came, I was kind of free to draw it. I sat down and I read it, and then I think it was a few days later I started drawing it, and I privately messaged him and I just turned him and said, I'm really nervous about actually putting pen to paper on this one, and I've drawn kind of some big heroes, as it were, kind of thing, when it comes to comic characters, as it were, but I felt a little bit nervous drawing this one, which is really interesting. So, but what's nice about this kind of story is that it's a one-off, and there's a lot of love. I think hopefully the love does come across that and respect that we've got for the characters. And I think the issue itself is also a strong part of it is the friendship between Johnny and Wulf really comes through.
That's one thing that always seemed to, as you say, come through in the script. It's not just their friendship, but it felt like that was reflected in real life between John and Carlos, that, these people worked together for so long. To see them together, when we got Carlos over for, I think it was the SFX Weekender years ago, you could just see the affection.
Right.
I mean, what the obvious question for this is: does this have John's consent? Is John okay with this happening?
To be frank, I asked Matt Smith, if we could pitch and if he'd be interested purely as a one-off for a Christmas special, and Matt said, well, he's kind of held off from doing any more Stront, since Carlos's passing. I think there was a one-off that Chris Weston drew for the free comic book issue, but so I can only imagine that John would have signed off on that as well. But I think there's a big difference. I would say that between, this is not us going, we're going to relaunch Strontium Dog. This is not us going, here's a new series of Strontium Dog with new creators. This is purely a very respectful, born out of love, sort of 8-pager, and it is. I think that the difference in approach was important, as Laurence said. We sort of said, let's do it quite cinematic. Let's do it page wide. It's a big Leone, Once Upon a Time in the West, little sort of homage as well in there. So we were trying to bring certain things to it which are what people will recognise from the past, and staying true to it, having a bit of fun, a respectful little nod, and then get off stage quick.
We'll come on to the whole Western thing in a minute, but one thing that's interesting me an awful lot is you're talking about Starlord. What is it about the Starlord stuff that particularly appeals, and how is that different to when Strontium Dog transitioned into 2000 AD, do you feel?
Okay. That's the doorbell. I need to get it. I do apologise. Sorry.
Right.
Sorry.
I can cut this out.
Well, I mean, my first ever experience of 2000 AD and the characters was Starlord. I used to go around to a friend's house, Martin Lear, who lived 2 streets over, and he had issues of Starlord. And I remember reading really sort of strong memories, visceral memories of reading the Strontium Dog stories in colour and the and Robusters, and so that's the first time I saw any of these characters. So. And then I bought the reprint, which came out recently, of all the early Stront stories. So they've just got a bit of a different feel. It's kind of like it's a different era of Carlos. I mean, the colouring is wild. It's like it's far more. It's got that European influence heavy on it, which obviously with Carlos being Spanish and all. But it's like it. I think that's one of the things about I always found interesting with Carlos's work is like so many other artists who work for 2000 AD, the classic artists. You saw many kind of copies over the years and how their style influenced other artists. It felt like no one ever copied Carlos. Carlos was just like a singular tone, and I always find it fascinating that you didn't see a bunch of Carlos clones out there.
This is something that Mick has said, is that he was brought on specifically to mimic Carlos's style, and when he looked at it, oh yeah, no, I can do that. And then when he tried to do it, he realised how complicated it is.
Yes,
how much work is going on there.
Yes, I can say, well, kind of to answer your question earlier on. First of all, Starlord. I picked up Starlord before 2000 AD, so kind of Strontium Dog to me is kind of almost like my Judge Dredd, as it were, kind of thing. And what I liked about him was he was an outsider. He's a mutant. The way it was drawn incredibly detailed. It was a little bit dirty as well. It felt kind of like there was a lot of atmosphere in it, kind of thing. And what I also liked about it, looking back, was there was tons of really inventing kind of weaponry, kind of thing, as it were, kind of thing, which I really loved. There was like these different types of bombs and whatever else, and that worked really well. So it was great for the imagination. And then when I started the strip, I kind of looked back at it, and I said I kind of didn't want to go. The worst thing that you do is try to copy an artist, as it were, kind of thing. You're just going to fall flat on that one. So I was kind of being respectful, as I say, to the uniform, to the gun and things like this. And that's when I realised I've got this newer level of appreciation for Carlos with the amount of detail that was kind of put into the pages, and how simple he made it, but it's really, there was a lot of work underneath it, as it were, kind of thing. So that was interesting. And also kind of emotions as well. If you kind of look at Strontium Dog when Carlos done it, there wasn't like an over exaggeration of emotions, I felt, certainly not on Johnny himself, as it were. And that felt strange drawing when I had to draw kind of Johnny get angry and things like this kind of thing. It's kind of Carlos kind of indicates it, and it almost acts out in your brain, as it were, if you see what I mean, kind of thing. So it's interesting. So no, I learned from it, and as I said, it's kind of, yeah, it just kind of, there is something. It was Starlord was the first time I tapped into it, and his kind of costume evolved, as it were, as Carlos went on kind of drawing the character. His line work involved as well. So it was interesting.
Let's talk a little bit about the Western aspect to Strontium Dog, because Rob, you've got quite a bit of experience with Westerns in comic book form, with Ichabod, Azrael, etc., etc. What is the appeal of Westerns? It's a genre I've never really got into myself, but why is it so? Why do you find it so suited to comics and the characters that you deal with?
Well, in terms of this one and Once Upon a Time in the West, it's just, I mean, that's at the heart of who Johnny Alpha is, right? He and Wulf is a gunslinger and his partner, So just that incredible scene at the start of Once Upon a Time where Bronson turns up and off the train and they're waiting for him. That's how we kind of open this, really. And then the title is Once Upon a Time in the West, because of the way Wulf says it, which is, I was ridiculously pleased with. I mean, it's the mythic aspect. It's built into the DNA of cinema, I think. At this point, we know that imagery of sort of like a wind blowing, the dust up as two men face off against each other. But it's also, I guess, historically, you look into the fact that it's a kind of largely a lawless tapestry. So there is right and wrong. There are primal storytelling forces butting up against one another, we're all of us are going to be suckers for the story where the good guy turns up to face off against the bad guys, and usually faces up alone. So you can see that's in Johnny, that's in Dredd as well. You know what I mean? It's like and it worked beautifully in this because Laurence is one of the best out there at that cinematic, evoking a certain mood. Laurence can do that. Hence why that was our approach to this one.
Can I also kind of getting Dylan on board was something that I really wanted to do as well. Kind of because Dylan's got like a European style, so I was really pleased when he came aboard. I mean, I used to kind of send the pages as I was doing them. I was just sending them to Dylan, like one at a time, or two or whatever. And I would briefly get on the phone with him, and I'd chat about what I wanted. It was only 2 pages in colour, but I'd have a quick chat with him on how I wanted. And I think he knew once we got what we wanted, we were like, yeah, this is it. We've now kind of like the tone. The first 2 pages, the amount of colours, and the colours that Dylan's pulled out of it, extraordinary, I feel. So really pleased working with Dylan as well on this.
Well, the colour work is always, this is going to sound odd, the most vivid thing in those early Starlord ones, because we just released Search and Destroy, which was the...
Yeah, it's great, I've got it.
The collection.
Yeah, the colours are amazing in it.
Yeah. And it's so difficult to kind of get the intensity of those colours over, because we're not printing on newsprint anymore. So in some ways, the amount of ink they had to pour into the pages to make them stand out would completely overwhelm modern printing. But you go from the colouring stuff on Carlos, and you've got that wonderful moment when he's clearly been told that most of it's going to be in black and white, and he just stops mid-panel. You've got one panel that's half black and white and half colour. I'm not bothering with that.
Well, one of the things I liked about that collection, reading it, the last few months, is, and this is not by any stretch a criticism, it's actually a compliment. You can see how a lot of it is being made up on the fly, and it's kind of the brilliance of by the nature of what the comic was then. Very often there's just from the writing, there's cliffhangers of, you really get the impression they don't know next week how they're getting out of it. But that's part of the fun of the thing, And then you have things like the Gronk turning up and then dies pretty quick. And then you can almost feel them kind of going, oh, that was a good character. We need to bring that back. That kind of worked. So then a different Gronk turns up a couple of episodes later. But that was the nature of the thing. It was like a weekly churn. That's who those guys were, right? John and Alan at that point were writing, and so it's kind of nice to see Carlos again just changing his style as he's going.
Well, I mean, that is something that John said. He's much more of an intuitive writer. So I think he says it in the America Lost and Found book.
He does. I got it up there. I just turned up. There's a great bit in it which I absolutely loved, where he basically said American comics, they like to see a story all planned out, which is probably why he hasn't done that many American comics over the years, because he just makes it up as he go along. And that's like a dirty word for a writer to say that. A lot of people would be going, oh, you can't do that. He's done fairly well out of it over the years. It's worked for him, and there's amazing stories have come out of it. But and I think it's a bit of pretension from writers when they almost see that, like they used to get chucked at Lost, or they're making it up as they go along. You do realise a lot of that's a lot of what writing is. You do plan certain things out, but a lot of it, and some of the best accidents come from you just going, oh, hang on, and that's allowed. So I like to think John's kind of like a patron saint for that.
I mean, it's great when it works, but then you just reference Lost, where it didn't.
Well, that's a longer conversation. It worked with a lot of Lost, and with certain aspects it didn't. So there you go.
Fair enough. I mean, with the legacy of a character like this, you know, this was Johnny Alpha was Carlos's favourite character. And Laurence, you've already mentioned this kind of, you know, it gave you pause.
Yeah.
There's a lot of legacy there. There's a lot of weight to deal with, even for like a one-parter. How much is that? You know, you talk about being respectful, but how much is that kind of setting that legacy aside to a degree and going, well, we're here to tell our own story?
Yeah. Well, I think when me and Rob spoke about before starting it, what really rang with me when Rob turned around and said, let's do it widescreen, you know, kind of don't channel Carlos. I think I was kind of thinking in the Carlos kind of vein, some of it kind of thing, and that would have been an absolute disaster. I think kind of, as Rob said, just do what's gut instincts to you, and that is generally widescreen, cinematic, and things like this, like stronger light and dark. And I just done that, and as I say, it's done with respect, as it were. And as I said before I started it, I paused, thought about it. I'm not drawing it for you know, kind of, I don't think of the wider audience of fans, as it were, when it was something like this. This was about me drawing it, kind of thing, and there's a very small amount of people. It's for, I want to please the writer, I want to please the editor, and I wanted to please my kind of, like, I want to do a good job myself because of, hopefully, what I've said about the amount of respect I had for the original creators on it. So, you know, beyond that, you know, that's it. I don't really care. But for me, it was about what I can do and what I can develop, you know, with that script. And taking, I mean, Carlos is a creator. He created the character, as it were. And I think creators create, if you see what I mean. That's what they're about. And I was inspired by his creation. So that's a good thing in my book. If I was a creator, well, if I create something and somebody else kind of is inspired by it, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you go into writing any major character that you have a historical, emotional reaction to, you know, you read it and you loved it, you always go in with a certain amount of, you know, you take a breath before you go
Absolutely.
in. But part of doing this job is you know, is then you get on with it. You have to sort of step forward and get on with it. But you know, you like I say that, but we didn't have to do it. This was something that was a suggestion. And I almost feel like this is like, I like to think it's like a band doing a cover version of another band, right? You know, it's like you love the song is the reason you do it. So you're not sort of, the whole reason you're doing it is almost like a nod of respect to sort of how much you.
Yeah, totally. And if somebody kind of, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have probably not read Starlord. So if I can get a person to kind of, one person maybe or whatever else to say, oh, I want to go and check out kind of like early Starlord, you know, kind of Strontium Dog, I'd be well pleased, as it were, because, you know, if they can capture an ounce of what I got from that, with that kind of uniform, that gun, the way he looked with the eyes, kind of thing, that kind of grittiness that was in every panel, I'd be delighted. That's, you know, kind of, if I'm honest, if somebody else, you know, kind of can feed off of that, then brilliant.
Do you both have a favourite Strontium Dog moment?
Well, it's got to be because I hate it, isn't it? It's just like, I mean, it's...
Well, for me, it was, because I think I was roughly the same time, was, you know, the whole kind of arc of, you know, which was Johnny Alpha's origin. I've forgotten the name of it now, kind of thing. You know the one I mean? The
Portrait of a Mutant.
Okay, that's it. Right, okay. So Portrait of a Mutant is probably one of my favourites, because at the time I was probably around about the same age as Johnny Alpha in that kind of thing, and it kind of, well, it opens up lots of stories on that kind of thing, but there is something kind of really special for me, just about that, as it were. Yeah. How about you, Rob?
Yeah, well, no, it's because I hate you, because it's like, it is just one of those, it's like request denied, isn't it? It's just one of those.
Yeah.
Right, it feels very very John, and the way it's delivered is just unflinching. And like when you were a kid, that is precisely the type of thing that American comics didn't do.
Yeah, true.
Which 2000 AD did in spades, and would still remains sort of like a slap across the face. Basically, it's like, oh, this is a ostensibly heroic lead character, and it's got that dark edge. It felt like it was when you were a kid. It felt like you were reading hints of sort of like an X-rated comic, basically, which goes a long way when you're 13 or whatever you are, But you love that.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that's always struck me about reading John's stuff, especially, and also when he's writing with Alan, is the notion of inversion. So an awful lot in Dredge, you get the comedic inversion where they take something and they flip it on its head. So the Democrats are the terrorists, that kind of thing. But also there's a moral inversion as well with John, which most people think of. It's not black and white morality, anti-heroes, stuff like that. But I think the power of the moment you're talking about, Rob, is that in a kid's comic, which it still was at the time, it takes a moment in which all moral education for that readership will have said, well, the important thing now is that he turns the other cheek.
Yeah.
And he does, what's right and proper, and he puts him in cuffs and takes him away. And he shoots him.
Yeah.
He does.
But it's not even that. It's because I hate you, and it's like it's unpretentious, it's direct, it's honest. It's like it's a real, true moment for that character, and it's completely earned for everything that we've seen of that character before. So it's one of those kind of, it's just I can't swear. It's just an amazing comics. Well, it's just a fucking amazing comics moment, basically, and it's a beautiful bit of writing, and the way it's drawn is brilliant because it's his point of view looking up into the gun, isn't it? It's just kind of like, so you're being shot in the face.
I mean, that's an important thing. You talk about that moment being earned, and of course, that's the only way you can do that kind of moral inversion, that honesty, is if you have shown the reasons why it works. If he just did that, it would be a complete abrogation of all moral responsibility. But you go, fair enough.
Because there's a danger with that moment, but it's just a badass moment, right? Which is crappy writing. That's super easy to do, but it's going to resonate with people because you that character's been, you've seen what that character's suffered and gone through over the years, and you see that you're there in that moment. You get the anger. So all that in a strip which can also have a Gronk going, oh, my heart sees on a regular basis.
Well, that's the beautiful part of it, isn't it? Yeah.
Which is one of the great, amazing things about sort of the writing and John's ability and John Allen's ability to flip tone. You know what I mean? It's just
Well, it's the death of Wulf is so powerful because you've been through this huge, massive story in which you discover he is a time-traveling Viking.
Yeah.
Literally time-traveling Viking. You've been through all of that to make his death means, you're not just killing him off.
Yeah.
It means something because you've been on and Strontium Dog is, not that I'm saying in any way, shape or form that this is exceptional in 2000 AD because it's not, but Strontium Dog is exceptional in that it does that virtually with all of its characters. It takes the time to explain why you should care about what they do.
And I think again it's the thing of like you've got like even in its purest an introductory form with the Starlord stories, when you have a giant a Viking with a big hammer going, now the fun begins, or something, while he's whacking people across the side of the head. Well, there is this purity between as we go back, Johnny and Wulf's, they're just friends. They're just really, really strong friends. So there's something pure, even as they're blowing people away and doing,
One of the inevitable questions is: would you want to do more, or is this just a one-off as far as you're concerned?
I think it's a one-off, isn't it, Laurence?
Yeah, I think so. I must admit, once I've drawn it, I mean, as I said, once I got over that step, that fear step, as it were, it was enjoyable. I wouldn't just draw. It'd have to be kind of like a good story, as it were. This one was just, as I said, it was almost like an introduction for people to hopefully find the character, as it were, kind of thing. I think if it was done again, it would have to be done with a proper story, and I'm not entirely sure whether there is one out there, if I'm honest, kind of thing. So for the time being,
I don't think I'm the person to write. Would be the person to write Strontium sort of for any length of time. I think I could happily sort of write the odd short here and there or something fun like that, and have fun with it. But I like I say, I think it's so ingrained with the original creators. I think you'd be hard pressed to. Yeah. Good luck launching a new series of this with different creators. I think would be a difficult thing to do. But so I suspect it's a one-off, and it's one of those things. I think we both we just really enjoyed ourselves doing it, didn't we? It was like it's us sort of, I think, going back to being comic reading kids, basically. So it's kind of a respectful doff of the cap.
Yeah, I think so. That's exactly what I would say. It's done. I've said all the way along. It's done with respect.
And without spoilers, do you have a favourite moment in this story? Is there a moment where something clicked, or you look at it now and go, "Oh, actually, that worked quite nicely"?
I really enjoyed working with Dylan on it. I enjoyed working with Rob, obviously.
Yeah,
but I really enjoyed
Rob. Cheers. Yeah.
But I really enjoyed working with Dylan, chatting through it and whatever else. That was really enjoyable for me. And kind of Rob put some kind of cool technology in it, as I said. And I think if you read those early Starlord episodes of Strontium Dog, when you first come across some of them, like the equipment that he uses, I think is very cool. So when he says, there's a certain line he says in it and whatever else, I was like, oh yeah, this is it. Kind of that's when I was getting excited.
I did enjoy writing Wulf. Wulf was fun. It's partly the dialogue, but partly who he is as well. Yeah, and without giving too much away, there's something that he does in it, which I like to think is kind of like true to who he was. It's kind of very sweet, and he's kind of very sweet and very brutal at the same time. There's a lot to be said for that.
And of course, a pun title. Which are your favourites?
I do love a pun. Well, I wrote that one, and I wrote "They shoot talking horses, don't they?" back to back, and I thought I seem to have hit peak pun title mode in my career. I'm not sure what that is. It's like a low-level midlife crisis or something. But I'm horribly pleased with the title to this. It's just there are certain times you sort of think, all right, get over yourself now. But this is a good title, genuinely a good title.
But it's baked into the DNA of 2000.
Yeah, it totally is.
Like the little next prog.
Yeah, I used to read those and love those. Yeah.
But it's tonally, it's kind of it's just a title which immediately goes, this is fun, and that's part of that was built into what was what those early stories were. You know what I mean? So
wonderful, thank you.
And it's in the Christmas Prog, which is a good thing in itself. And I have very fond memories of waking up. It would be the first present I would open would be the annual that my parents would put out. So to draw Strontium Dog in the Christmas Prog is like a double bonus for me, because as I said, it'd be the first present I'd open. I'd go then open the rest, and then I would always come back to the Prog. There we go.
We're in the equivalent of that, basically. And
yes.
And there's Johnny on the cover. So
yeah.
But yes, I know. I feel the same way. I do love a Christmas Prog.
Yeah, it's like, for me, it's the equivalent of the Radio Times.
There's I believe a Brendan, or is it Brett Ewins? I think it's Brendan.
I can't. Sure. No, that looks more like Robin Smith to me, isn't it?
Oh, maybe it is.
I'll tell you what. I remember in the annual
it is Robin Smith. You're correct.
In one of the annuals, Brendan done I think it was either an annual or something special. Brendan done a Strontium Dog as well. In that one, I really enjoyed that as well. There were some vivid colours in that, and that was a proper weird one as well.
Is that the opening spread where he's coming in on the hover bike?
No, but that's very cool as well. But he done another one as well. But that's very cool. The one on the hover bike, that's great as well.
That's what I always think about when I think about the color on that Strontium Dog stuff. You know, Carlos is great, very vivid, but then you get kind of psychedelic. Brendan
yeah.
No, it's a shame that the bottom has dropped out of the annuals market. To be honest with you, because what a nostalgia buy that would be, but. Yeah, bit of a mugs game.
No one does it anymore, do they? I mean, you see them.
You see them in WH
like a Little Mix annual or something like that.
Yeah. They've been doing retro, haven't they? Like
the only problem is the sheer size of the print run you have to do. Right. Like they're a massive. Lostly, you've got to print so many to sell a fraction of those in order to recoup the cost of the full. And you know, we often get people saying, you know, why don't you do these anymore? And it's like we'd love to, we just can't. I think I don't know if you heard my interview with Robin Smith a few years ago, but one of the things he was talking about was the annuals made a significant amount of money. Like they were at the time, they were the thing that. It was the cream that would be kind of, you know, scooped off the top, etc. But the amount of money that was put into them was minuscule.
Yeah, so, I know. It's a lot of reprints and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it'd be reprints. It'd be like
quizzes,
stuff that just wasn't necessarily good enough.
Yeah.
Or to go in the normal issues or stuff, you know, the occasional thing that had been specially commissioned. But then you got Robin Smith and, you know, whoever was the bodger in the office, like Kev O'Neill, basically just putting these things together after hours on the cheap.
Oh wow! Right, okay.
But they have that wonderful, almost archaic feel to them. You know, they're so different because I guess they were being put together on the fly as cheaply as possible.
You've got sort of, but then you've got some of those amazing, like, you know, by the time you get to 82, you've got McMahon's Space Vampire stuff in the annual, and it's just some of the.
And the first, I've still got the first Jazz Dread annual. I mean, I got rid of a lot of stuff, but I kept that one because it brought back such fond memories. And I can remember taking it to school, and me and some of my mates were doing. There's a quiz in it of, could you be a judge? And you have to do the quiz.
Oh, you do have this tendency.
I failed it, and I was gutted.
I think this is a mood. Where are we? That's one panel. There you go.
Is that Mac 1?
It is Mac 1.
It is, yeah.
Look, and he's in a diving suit, Laurence. There's no original ideas.
I know.
Lovely. Thanks very much indeed to Rob and to Laurence. Looking forward to digging into their Strontium Dog one-off. So Proteus Vex returns in the Christmas Prog, this time with Michael Carroll and Jake Lynch at the helm, plus colouring by Jim Boswell. I had a nice chat with Michael and Jake about the new series. Turned into a bit of a love-in, if I'm perfectly honest with you. So be prepared for that. But yeah, it was fantastic to explore some of the influences, the difference in the direction of the strip now that Jake has taken over on art duties from Henry Flint. And what's in store from Proteus Vex. New series of Proteus Vex. Starting in the Christmas Prog. Mike, for those people who've maybe not read Proteus Vex or need a refresher on the previous series, do you want to explain a little bit about what it is?
Yeah, it's basically a big, sprawling science fiction adventure type saga. It came about a couple of years back when I was chatting to Tharg, and I expressed an interest in doing something different because I've been writing Dread for so long. I wanted to stretch my wings a little bit. He suggested that Henry Flint was coming free from whatever he'd been working on at the time. And Henry was keen to do something with lots of aliens. And I wanted for a long time to do a kind of, well, originally started the idea was a sort of a detective noir type story, but deep space and only aliens, no humans. But when I was chatting to Tharg, or to Matt, as we like to call him, he said sort of like Jason Bourne in space. And I went, oh yeah. So that's kind of where the idea began. So basically, Proteus Vex is it's in a post-war galaxy. It's there's been a war that's been raging for 1400 years. It ended a couple of decades ago, or 4 or 5 decades ago, and so everybody's still feeling the shock. The Proteus Vex is the lead character. He's an agent for the winning side, the Imperium Ascendant, and he's basically a troubleshooter. He's the sort of guy who goes around and gets things sorted out. And in the course of the first story, he uncovers I would say it's a mystery, a kind of a conspiracy, which basically sets him against one of his former bosses, a fellow called Rose Seven Barrion. And it's I guess in a way you could describe it as it's a standard detective type story in many ways, but with lots and lots and lots of bug and monsters and laser guns. And yeah, so that's it. It's a sort of thing that I would have absolutely loved as a kid, only written by me, so there are no surprises. I mean, I know what's coming up. It's disgraceful. But yeah, it's been tremendous fun to write. And we're on the second book now, which has taken things off in a whole new different direction, partly because we have Henry wasn't available this time around. So we have new art team. And it is amazing how that shapes everything. They're building on what Henry has done and going in directions that he wouldn't necessarily have gone. But the interesting thing I think about that is that Henry took the story in directions I wouldn't necessarily have gone. So yeah, I guess maybe there are surprises for me. It's fascinating to see your work brought to life via someone else's imagination. I mean, I've always found this with comics anyway. I mean, I picture everything as I write it, and I go, yep, that'll be awesome. And then the art comes in and I go, oh no, that's awesome. I have no idea what awesome is until I see what these guys have done. So Henry did that with the first Proteus Vex. I mean, I didn't even see any of his designs until the finished artwork was ready. And then what Jake and Jim have done is they've climbing on his shoulders and taken it in a whole different direction. So we never would have got here if I hadn't been where we started from, if you see what I mean. Does that make sense? Yes, it does make sense in my head, but then so many things do. And only in my head. Yeah, so it's fascinating. I've just received just yesterday, Jake sent me the artwork for episode 10. It's out of 12 episodes. And also Jim sent me the colours for episode 9. So I mean, I'm every couple of weeks I get this little burst of adrenaline, going, oh, this is awesome, this looks fantastic, and I go back and I reread my script with the entire with the panels, and yeah, it's very good. I'm really enjoying it as a reader as well as a writer. So hopefully the real readers will enjoy it too.
Jake, is Mike normally like this to work with? Is it normally this kind of stream of consciousness?
Stream of subconsciousness.
I tell you what, he has been so incredibly generous throughout this that you're trying to do your best for him, because he's been so kind about what he's been receiving. So yeah, he's been an absolute dream to work for.
Thank you. Thanks, Daniel.
Sorry, work with.
Yes. Well, we do have. Sorry.
No, go on, Mike.
We do have a. It is strange. I'm so used to writing Dread, where there's so little turnaround time that I almost never get to see the artwork. Maybe 20% of the time I get to see some of the work before it's printed. But with Proteus Vex, I'm seeing all of the stuff that's coming in. So we did catch a couple of cases where I'm going, no, we need to tweak this panel here or there. But at the same time, it's I think it gives Jake and Jim a bit more a bit more freedom. They can for example, one action scene recently where Jake said, no, I added some extra panels to make this clearer. And I'm going, well, that's quite a contrast to all the artists who tell me to reduce the number of panels in the action scenes, because that way they can draw bigger panels. But yeah, so we've done a bit of back and forth like that, and we're looking now towards book 3. But we can't say, I'm not going to say what's in it, but Jake suggested something that he was keen on exploring as an artist, and that actually it doesn't fit in exactly with what I'd planned. But then I honestly think writing a story is like planning a route in the car. You know where you're starting from, you know your destination, and you know a few points you have to hit along the way. You know, the toilets, the service station, this kind of thing. But you don't have to follow the exact route. So what Jake suggested is taking us down a road that I wouldn't have thought of going down. And it's opened up a whole new vista, as it were. So yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff. It's a nice collaboration, I think.
That's a very kind thing to say. You know,
Yes, it is.
if you manage to hit a toilet during the day, I'm over the moon, to be honest with you. So, but can I just say that your scripting of action, I've never come across a writer, you script your action really tight. You have a very specific fight in mind when you're scripting. Do you have that? Or?
Yeah, I do. Well, I did do some martial arts back when I was younger. So I when it comes to hand-to-hand stuff, I like to imagine that I know what I'm talking about. I don't, but I do like to imagine that. Yeah, I always have this mental images of how a fight is going to go, and I try and use the environment if at all possible. You don't just, person A hits person B and person B staggers backwards, clutching their face and going, my nose.
Like hand locks.
You're an alien, they go, my lack of nose. What you need to do is if they're in a particular place, they can be tripping over, bodies of the previously attacked or whatever. But I always say, because I've worked with artists like John Higgins, who's very, very, very visual, but he's also a good writer. And I find that I try and see everything from an artist's point of view if I can. I mean, I'm not an artist by any means, but I try and see it, from your point of view. But I always say that, if you can come up with a better way of depicting something, then do that, because it is almost always going to be right. The only time in my entire illustrious career, one time an artist turned a 6-page story into a 9-page story, and that really annoyed me because all the pacing was wrong.
That wasn't me, was it? No,
it was years and years ago. That was back in the days when we had Euros and no virus, so pre-Euros. But we had but generally, yeah. If I say, this should be a low-angle shot looking up as the hero strides menacingly, but you reckon, no, it'd be much better to have him silhouetted from the light of the corridor behind him, this kind of thing. Then I'll say, yeah, go for it, because the reader, the first thing the readers notice is the color, and then they notice the artwork, and then they will notice the story, and then they notice the lettering. So from the point of view of what's most important to grab their attention or to set an atmosphere is the color and then the art. Or if one person is doing both, then it's just the art as a whole. The story is, in a way, the minutiae of the story, the actual storytelling, the words and the descriptions are almost secondary to what the reader will subliminally pick up just by turning the page. That's a problem with if someone changes a 6-page story to a 9-page story, and I have it in my head that a certain action will take place at the bottom of the right-hand page. And then when they turn the page over, you get a different scene or you get a revelation. You don't want the twists to be somewhere they can catch out of the corner of their eye as they're just flicking through the story. You want the twists to be somewhere that surprises them. Little things like that.
I have to say, I mean, I've obviously read the story, and it's stunning.
Oh, thank you.
It sort of it knocked me over. It's that good. So, but a big shout out to Jim as well for his colour work, because it takes two of us to come even close to a Henry Flynn. It's remarkable.
Oh yeah, well, I'd imagine. I mean, I don't want to speak for Henry, but but I will. I'll speak for everybody. But Henry is Henry is brilliant, but he's on a different level to the rest of the universe. Let's face it. I mean, this guy is so good. But what you guys have done is, you've taken his work in a new direction. That's a phrase you have to say slowly, otherwise it sounds a bit rude. You don't want to go in a new direction. So he, I mean, I know he did say, because I briefly talked to him, and he said that he liked your work and he's happy for you to take over. I think he'd be happy with what you've done. All right. I mean, certainly, I think it's absolutely what you've done is fantastic. And I will say this: the listeners or readers, depending on how you're taking this one in, Jake keeps putting little things in the background that make me laugh, or that make me go, "Oh, I should have thought of that." And there's one in the third episode, I think, where there's, I won't say what it is, a little thing in the background. I'm thinking it's a little character who's added. I think we could do an entire series based on this little character, just on one or two panels that it didn't exist until Jake decided to put them in. So that is brilliant. I say third episode. I don't know how this is going to be split up. It could be a double parter in the first prog, which means overall it'll be 11 episodes rather than 10.
Oh, is it really? I have no idea.
Could be. The Mighty One makes these decisions, and we're just lucky to be part of it in some minor way. Oh, bless his mighty cotton socks. That's what happened to the last one. I originally wrote it as a 10-episode story, and then the first 2 episodes came out in Christmas Prog last year. I mean, let's say Christmas Prog. Sorry, the Yuletide Christmas Prog last year. So so it could be the same this time. I mean, who knows what the Mighty One might decide, but it is looking gorgeous. You guys are doing amazing work.
Well, bless your heart. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Right. And I did write to Henry myself, and I picked up a few gigs that I thought, in an ideal world, Henry should have had, and I kind of wrote and apologised to him, and he himself was so generous as well. He was just like, crack on with it. So I love it. So,
well, it was going to be one of my questions when I get a word in edgeways.
Sorry, what?
Is it just something about guests who are Irish or Northern Irish that you just sort of wind them up and let them go? Not that I'm complaining. I'm not complaining in any way, shape, or form. It's really gentle.
Well, that's because of 800 years of oppression or whatever it was, as far as I remember. I mean, I wasn't there for most of it, but even so. Yeah. See, this is our revenge. We both stop talking, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, you might sing. That probably won't happen today. Well, you think it's bad. I have to talk to PJ Holden every now and again. I mean, he's the champion. Actually, PJ is probably my most frequent collaborator after Annie Parkhouse, I think. And I've learned so much from him, from Page, that he's as a writer, you learn from the artist. At least I try to. And one of the things I've learned is not to feel bad about telling them what I want, but at the same time to remember that I'm not in charge of the art, unless it's something that is a genuine mistake, or if the artist leaves out something that I think should be included, or just but that very, very rarely happens. So how do we get here?
Coming back to the question I was going to ask.
Oh, yeah.
When, as has been alluded to already, Jake, you've taken over a couple of projects that Henry's been working on. Is it is that a kind of a natural aligning of two styles that are relatively similar, or have you are you doing your best Henry Flint impression? If that doesn't sound good.
So when I did Hell Machine, when that came to me, that was a bit of an emergency job. Because Henry wasn't too well at the time, and so that was me trying to do a sort of Henry Flint. So just so when the two sort of like parts match together, it wouldn't be sort of massively jarring for the reader. But after that, it's like if they're using me, they're using me, and I will try and learn from Henry, and I have tried to learn from Henry, but I hope it's still me. So if you look at the Proteus Vex, the first sort of 3 episodes of that, you'll see the style is probably quite familiar, although I'm still trying to find my way with the character. And then slowly by episode 4, I'm hoping that it's probably more into sort of my zone, but hopefully it's quite a nice transition. So it is kind of thought about a little bit, but you know, you do your best.
Henry had such a unique style, not just in general, but also on Proteus Vex. Are there certain touchstones that you've gone to in terms of his influences? You know, that you've thought, well, clearly that comes from there, so I'm going to let that kind of feed in mentally to what I'm doing.
So I would feel really quite wrong to kind of try and analyse Henry's sort of art style, because I'd get it all wrong, because I'm not particularly clever. But he has a sort of like a naivety when he draws that kind of belies actually how brilliant. Actually, it's a sort of simplicity that comes from someone really, really knowing what they're doing. And you just kind of look at it. So I try to keep, particularly in the first 3 episodes, things as sort of as simple a shape as he would. But now I'm sort of like well on from that. I think it's quite different, but I don't know if other people would think so, to be honest. So I can't really answer that. Henry's brilliant, and the first thing I do whenever I get a script that was once done by Henry is I write to the writer and I apologise for not being Henry. You can't top the guy. I want to see everything by Henry Flint. That would be my dream.
If only we had some kind of cloning technology, that would be...
Yes. Did they have those sort of machines in Mega City 1? Like Mega Comics?
Yeah.
Kenny Who, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that does make a lot of sense, because a lot of Henry's stuff, especially when he really tries, is very like a certain level of Mick McMahon stuff, or Michael McMahon, depending on what country you're from. And that would explain, because I've never actually seen Henry Flint in the flesh, and I'm not entirely sure he's even real. No, that's not true. I have actually met him several times, and he is real, and he's a good guy. But it's interesting because, as I say, when Proteus Vex, the first series started, myself and Henry had no actual real communication until he was like 5 or 6 episodes in. So I had no real input into the direction which the way the story was going to go. But I did send him a few designs that I'd done for Vex's ship, and a couple of other bits and pieces, like tiny little things like that, and he completely ignored them and just went his own way. I mean, completely ignored them. One day, Jake, I'll send you the design I did for the ship.
Yeah, I'd love to see him.
But he was right too, because otherwise, if we'd gone the way I'd originally envisaged it, the story would have looked quite ordinary. And that's not to disparage anybody else or any other artist. It wouldn't have stood out the way it did. He gave us this kind of almost Technicolor 2D world in a way, because he didn't do a lot of shading deliberately on the art. And of course, yourself and Jim are coming back away from that a little bit. But again, we wouldn't have got to where we are now if we hadn't started off going in that way. So yeah, I think he did an amazing job. So someone described the series as being writing sort of fully formed in a slab. That is, that someone could jump in, and if they weren't aware that it was a new series, they could get the feeling that this had been going on for some time, which was one of the effects I wanted to get. But when Henry created this whole world, whole worlds like that, straight in one go. So we're when we're working with him, he is easily one of the best in the business. I was lucky enough to work with him before on a couple of other things, and his stuff is just stunning. But then you see what you guys have done is amazing. I wish we could show some bits up. But it's only a couple of weeks before the first episode comes out.
Yeah.
See that.
Yeah, I would just say to anyone on the first episode, I think it gets,
It's the one thing I've learned over the years, Jake, is you do not talk your own work down. Other people will do that. I do a lot of woodwork, and one of the rules that we learned is, number one, don't point out your flaws. And number two, turn the crappy side against the wall. So, that is... It's harder to do that with your artwork, but seriously, yes. No, what you've done incredible work, and some of the designs are... Oh, I wish we could talk about it in detail. Some of the stuff that you guys have done has been...
It all started from where Henry took it, So, things like the ship. I mean, only Henry could come up with that ship.
Yeah.
And it's a really sort of it's a brilliant ship, but it's a really hard ship to sort of make look amazing as Henry does, sort of thing. So, similarly for the sort of guns and stuff like that, there's one panel of a gun that he did that is that's the one, yeah. Which is served as almost the basis for sort of so many guns for what I've done. There's so many little nods in it to his design work, but I'm sort of very much an apprentice to him.
Oh well, yeah. Well, perhaps, yeah. But you are, you're doing very well. I don't want to sing your praises too much because it's your turn to sing mine again. But you have done. You guys, especially we have to break it. We should have had Jim on this. Jim Boswell doing the colors.
Yeah,
it's just amazing work. He has, he really brought the spoilers to life, and I don't think he realizes how good he is.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote to him the other day when we got the colour work through, and I was just saying, look, I was a fan of him to begin with, but I just think the improvement, that what he's doing now is just sort of jaw-dropping. I just love those little touches, and he's the guy who's actually saving my neck every week. He's really enhancing and just adding little touches here and there that really kind of make it pop a bit more. He's amazing.
Oh yes, he's really way too good actually. Let's nobble him. But yeah, I think on the whole I'm very pleased with the way this story has gone. If we take it as one big tale, this one is the Shadow Chancellor. Oh, by the way, that is a title that I came up with about 15 years ago, and I've never had a chance to use it. It's because we watching the BBC News and something about Parliament was on, and they were all waffling on to each other, blah blah blah, and they started talking about the Shadow Chancellor. I'm going, that is the most awesome name for a bad guy ever. The Shadow Chancellor.
Until this moment, I didn't even think of that. Yeah,
that's where it comes from. But in this case, I was able to use it. I set that up in the last book by having row 7 Baryon being the Chancellor or a Chancellor, and so effectively what we have this time is Shadow Chancellor. And those who read the first book might be able to figure out exactly what that means. But the part of Proteus Vex is that if you analyze what the words Proteus Vex mean, you get some ideas what's going on in the story. Proteus was a god of the sea who could change his form, and he would change his form to avoid answering awkward questions, which is actually very good. I just usually pretend I can't hear people or that they have an accent. But so that's why he's Proteus Vex, because as we know, there's a little man inside who drives him around.
I was going to say, it never even occurred to me to sort of look at it. I thought, oh, Mike, he's just very good with names. And everyone's got bloody weird names and all that sort of stuff. Just go with it, Jake. And
I always try and put in clever names if I can, because it makes me feel like I know what I'm doing.
You did tell me one.
About one of them.
I can give away.
Yeah.
It was a very specific character, which is a great story.
Yeah, that's what further down the line we can talk about that. But yeah, that was That was a good one. Yeah, but even the titles. The last one was Another Dawn, and it refers to the fact that the book, the first book, opens with the flashback to the bad guys' solar system being destroyed because the heroes, as it were, the Alliance, teleported a sun into their solar system. And two suns in one solar system just doesn't go, as according to the old proverb. So it was like, boom. And that's why we have another dawn, because they have another sun.
Wow.
But also there's a line in that fifth or sixth episode of that story where, I'm trying to think back exactly how it is. But basically, they're going after the bad guy, or they think he might be the bad guy. And Vex says that, if this is true, if he has, betrayed us, he's never going to see another dawn. So again, all of the titles sense that they because I spent so long developing the story, you have a lot of time to come up with these things and change the names and tweak the titles and then try and change it so it looks like you knew what you were doing all along, even though it's really all just comes together right in the last second. That's kind of like my entire life so far.
Oh yeah.
Not that we're on the last second yet, as far as I know. No, we're cool.
But one thing I wanted to ask about was 2000 AD does have this tradition of kind of out there science fiction series. The obvious one is Nemesis, but also things like Shakara, and of course the Henry Flint series. What's the formula? What's the secret to doing sci-fi that's not necessarily directly riffing off westerns or other sci-fi movies? What are the elements that you require?
I'll take this, Mike.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
I draw pictures.
Yeah, that's kind of I write words that I'd like Jake or whichever artist I'm working with to draw, and that's it. No, I think the characters are key in Shakara. What worked brilliantly for me was the fact that we didn't know anything about Shakara for ages throughout the thing. But he was intriguing enough to make you keep on reading it. And the same with the early Nemesis stuff. I know you guys are way too young to remember this, but we didn't see what Nemesis looked like for the first many episodes. I think it was in the summer special that had a Nemesis story when we first saw Nemesis, and we realized his head was the same shape as the Blitz Spear.
Ah.
We never saw that coming because I just assumed Nemesis was a human because we had nothing to, as far as I remember, there wasn't anything to indicate that he was non-human. So we have a bit of a mystery going on there with Shakara and with Nemesis, but we know the characters because of their actions. In this case, with Vex, we're trying to do the same thing. We haven't given away too much about his past. That will be revealed if we manage to get a third series. Should Target the Beautiful decide that we're nice enough, but we try to keep a bit of an air of mystery. But with regards to the story, for example, with Another Dawn, the original draft for that had the revelation at the end that the bad guys, the Obdurate homeworld was destroyed when another sun was teleported in. And I suddenly went, no. We don't reveal that at the end as the great twist. We put that right at the beginning, the very first panel, and that means the story goes in a direction that you weren't necessarily planning. As a writer, you don't want to keep on, catching yourself out. But at the same time, every idea you've got to say, that's a great idea. How can we turn it upside down? How can we look at it from a different angle? How can we turn it inside out or paint it a different color or whatever, or move it very, very far away so it looks really small, but then you get close and you go, oh, it's huge. You cannot ever go, yeah, that'll do. You've got to go, no, that's good, but is it enough? And then you play with scale a lot. The great thing about science fiction is that you can do things on a massive scale. You can have characters like the Scorchers who appeared in book one, and they're 50 foot tall and they're humanoid. Only roughly, barely humanoid, but then aren't we all? So you can't have you can have that. So those characters are huge and they absolutely totally dwarf everybody else. But then we realize that inside the Proteus Vex character, there's the flesh pilot, who is tiny compared to him. So everything is shifted in scale and going the other way. So you can do that with science fiction. You can have timelines that shift in scale as well. we have a war, as I say, that lasts for 1400 years. It's not actually practical in real terms to have a war in space. Everything's just too far away. But this is science fiction space, not the same as real space. So ships can go faster tonight if we want them to. The FTL drive was invented by the writer wanting it enough. So that's how this works. But obviously you have to have your own internal story logic and so on. But yeah, so we get there. We get there by never resting on our laurels, Mike. That's the answer to your question. This is one of the rare times when I remembered the question by the time I get near the end. How do we make a story like that happen? Because we have to realize that there are no limitations other than those we set for ourselves. And if we decide those limitations are too limiting, well, we just stretch the boundaries a little, because space is stretchy in 4 dimensions.
Timey-wimey stuff.
Yes.
Yeah,
a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. Yes.
Jake, I want to come back to you. To just talk about how you go about crafting this world. I mean, relatively fortunate in that Henry had done a lot of the groundwork, and that cuts both ways, as you've said. But where you coming up with a fully realized world that needs all these background characters and situations, how much time do you spend in advance looking at something like this on Proteus Vex, and how much is it on the lam, as it were?
So a lot of it is sort of on the lam, to be honest with you. The first thing I sort of did was I got myself some cheat sheets, which is like basically every sort of very useful reference on Proteus, be it his ship, Midnight, or himself, or other ships, technology, and stuff like that. And that is basically the starting point. And you just try and get yourself into a mindset of just saying, right, well, it's without sounding sort of too glib about it. You see a portion of the panel and you think to yourself, oh, that needs something in that, so I'll just whack in a few lines and bingo, you've got technology. And you and Henry sort of does it incredibly easily. And I tell you what, he makes it look easy. It really isn't that easy, just like doing a load of lines and them having some kind of like some kind of cohesion sort of thing where you think, yeah, that feels right, that complements the sort of composition and stuff like that. So that's something I think I've sort of got a little better on during this time here. But yeah, everything comes from that. And when you say, oh, come up with all these different races, it's really hard. It's really, really, really hard to do that stuff quickly. And I just get blown away every time I look at someone like Henry Flint, who seems to do it so casually, whereas I have to work really hard to make something look easy, and it's just it. So yeah, I can't really answer that. You just gotta plug at it is the answer, and you'll get there.
I guess the contrast I'm interested in is you've done a fair bit of Judge Dredd work, because obviously you're clearly big fan, and there's so much of that world that is formed already that you can kind of there's a bit of McMahon, there's a bit of Bolland, there's a bit of Smith, etc., etc. Whereas with something like this, the challenge is so much greater, because you are having to you don't have those shortcuts, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, it's also Henry's gone so much further than just these are alien creatures. These are alien creatures with culture, and they have fashion, and they have pattern and all this sort of stuff. So it's a real challenge. It is a real challenge, and the more I've gotten into sort of understanding and sort of being able to draw the character more naturally, the easier it's coming. But it has been a struggle, I ain't gonna lie.
But that's your job. Don't complain. You've got the best job in the world.
Complaining.
Inventing universes. There's
Here's the
you,
thing.
me, God, and that's it. No.
Whenever I get to these positions, I sort of think to myself, well, Jesus Christ, I'm not down a mine, am I? You know.
Yeah. I have the same thing because I sweat over, panel descriptions, and I can get stuck on something like that for a day and a half, and suddenly go, I could be out in the rain, like delivering posts like I used to back in the 70s or 80s, whatever it was. Yeah, we do have a great job working in comics.
It's
We
the
have
wrong
to.
job to be tortured in. It really is.
Yeah.
So, just get on with it. That's what I love about this kind of art. Is it's just down and dirty. Just get it done, get it off. That's it.
It's only comics after all. It's not important.
Exactly.
Right, did I say that again?
Greatest bit of advice Andy Diggle ever gave me. He said, "It's comics. It's supposed to be fun."
Yeah.
And if you lose sight of that, you shouldn't really kind of even be doing it, because it's a real privilege to do this stuff. I get to drop out of society and do this.
Yeah.
It's brilliant,
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, if we're not having fun, the readers won't have fun, presumably. Yeah. Unless they're laughing at our expense. But even then,
I'll
I've been doing writing full time since 1999, when everybody in my old job decided that I should write full time, and it's there are some years and I go, this is terrible. I would be making 5 times as much money as a programmer, and I would. However, I wouldn't be able to look back at my body of work after a year and go, yeah, that's not bad. I'm quite pleased with that. Whereas I can do that with comics. I can look at my work and go, this is good, and I get the opportunity to invent new worlds and to add to worlds that are already there. I mean, to get to play in the big Judge Dredd sandpit, which is brilliant and quite populated sometimes, but nevertheless still brilliant. It's a great job. I mean, yes, we would all love to be rich, but on the other hand, given choice between having lots of money and lots of money and lots of stress, or no money and no stress, I would choose. Oh, hang on, maybe I do want the money. Yeah, no, this is great. And being able to do what we do, like with Proteus Vex, is that we're creating this whole thing from nothing. And theoretically, in 100 years' time, people could be looking at this story and going, "Wow, this is good fun. I'm enjoying this." It's very old-fashioned, they'll be saying, because they'll be so far advanced then. But
you can't take
we're creating things that live on after us, and the only other way to do that is to have children, and they're not going there, Not after the last batch.
Yes.
Well, on that note, I think it's probably a good.
You have to ask us what's coming up.
Oh, okay, right. Well, what's coming up then?
Who, me? No, Jake, you go first. I keep talking too much.
I haven't got a clue. Whatever Tharg tells me, I've got a little bit of on the quiet, a little bit of film work that I'm doing, which I'm hoping will continue for a little longer. But that's literally spare time sort of stuff. But it's really, really fun. Arthur's sort of said he's got a dread in mind for me, and I think there might be the big Heston payoff sometime in the year, and hopefully I get to work with you again, Mike, for the next book. It's someone else I'll look forward to.
Yeah. That's very good. Yeah, well, I think this collaboration has been very successful so far. Obviously, we can't show the artwork yet, but I think people are going to like what we've done between you and me and Jim. And I don't know who's doing the lettering yet. Last time it was, I think it was Simon. Did a great job. So hopefully this will happen. Yes,
yeah. That's the final bit. I'm looking forward to sort of seeing it all together.
Yeah, and be able to hold the comic in your hand and go, I made that. That's always the best bit. Yeah. So I've got Dreadnought still happening in the magazine. I've delivered Dreadnought Series 2 So John will be working on that soon enough. I've seen the artwork for the first 5 episodes of the first Dreadnoughts, and it's gorgeous. So I can't say more than that, but it looks fantastic. And I've got a Dread coming up drawn by Will Simpson, which is
wow.
Yeah, that's actually one of those career goals ticked off. It will be when it's printed. That's just one of those things that lifts your heart. So he's Will's been a hero of mine for a very long time. That's a few other bits and pieces. More Judges books on the way. It's happening. So I know this is comics and not books, but books are like text only graphic novels. I mean, that's the important way of looking at them, you know. So I think I've got a few things lined up for next year. Hopefully, Proteus Vex Series 3, if this one, captures enough imaginations that people write to Tharg and say, "Dear Tharg, I thought it was great." And also, if they write to Tharg, they might get prizes. I don't know if Tharg's looking for more letters, but I'm sure it can't hurt.
I didn't know this. I'd be writing in.
Actually, I worked out that if I write enough letters to Tharg, I'll actually make more money than I make as a scriptwriter. So, actually, nearly all of those people who write into letters, they're me. You know, I'm Stephen Watson of Paisley. That's a well-known fact. You know.
Thank you to Mike and to Jake for chatting away there. Couldn't get a word in edgeways, which is probably for the best. We'll be back in 7 days' time for more from the Galaxy's Greatest podcast. Make sure you get in touch if there is something you'd like us to feature. We are chasing up many of the suggestions. It's kind of sometimes quite difficult to get hold of people. But rest assured, we do appreciate all the feedback. If you feel like going on to the podcast provider of your choice and leaving us with a 5-star review, that would be also very delightful. Make sure you spread the word about the 2000 AD Thrillcast and stay safe as we head into the festive period. And until next time, athletes, Splendid Verthrig.
Alert! 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 Fill power levels dangerously high. Alert! Alert! Read 2000 AD every week. Ask your comic book store or newsagent now. Subscribe to the Galaxy's Greatest Comic at 2000ADonline.com.